Cool. Hello everybody, and thank you very much for coming to our talk. Our goal here today is to teach you how to reach
For the stars.
Take it away.
Okay. That's me. Hi, I'm Tess. I'm a producer at Oric Digital. I'm quite new to the industry. I come from a theater and circus background, and my entry into the industry was actually during the pandemic. My theater company, our show was cancelled, and I got some funding to turn it into a video game. And I did, and I published it, and that led me into this job. Yeah, and I'm the lead producer on this game that we're going to talk about in a moment. And John and I were hired on the same day, so we have like a blood bond
Yeah,
at
if,
Orok.
if one of us go, we both go.
That's right.
Yeah.
Burn Bridge. Great. Go ahead.
Cool. And I'm John O'Donnell. I'm a lead game designer at Oric Digital, and I'm also working with Tess on the game we're going to talk about. I'm only slightly more jaded than Tess. I've been working in video games the last few years, and but I've worked a lot in startups, and a big part of startups is you need to try and make opportunities and talk to people outside of your comfort zone. So it's something that I'm really passionate about, like the cross-disciplinary and just talking to people from different fields. And so, as Tess and I were saying, we make up a small part of the team working on Mars Horizon 2, which is the sequel to Mars Horizon, which is Orok Digital original IP that was quite successful. In the original, you were trying to make humanity a multi-planetary species, so you were trying to build a habitat on Mars and get humans living there. But in Mars Horizon 2, the focus is on the search for life. So you're trying to find evidence of life in our neighborhood around the sun. So it's a really in vogue from a research perspective, from an investment perspective, and also a mystery. We like to think of it a little bit as a like detective mystery game. So yeah, authenticity and collaboration are a big part of Orac Digital's brand. So much so that at this exact same moment in time, our production director Peter Willington is giving a talk on the other side of that wall about authenticity. You can't leave. We're very sensitive if anybody was to get up right now.
But we know who's over there. Mental math.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a big part of what we do. So we try to weave these conversations that we have with different industries into our video games. And our players really appreciate that. We're only able to do this because we're like prepared to collaborate, and Orok really, puts their money where their mouth is about giving us opportunities to get in touch with people and yeah, have really fruitful collaborations.
Yes, so at the end of this talk, you should have your own field guide for collaboration and how to go outside the industry, outside your company, and ask for help and advice. So first, you kind of we're going to go into like how you find those people that you want to collaborate with, and then let them basically get into your head and shift your perspective, and maybe it'll inform the mechanics, or maybe it'll inform the player's experience, but you are trying to emulate something and you want from the experts that kind of advice on how you want to emulate it. And also the value of getting marketing in early and being able to have this kind of win-win relationship with these partners, taking the team with you, so allowing the team to get inspired and excited about the content and really connected to the advice that we're getting and the kind of consultation. And also, this is also an excuse to tell you about our holiday in Iceland together. Curls gone wild.
So you might be thinking to yourself that collaboration might not be like immediately relevant to your work. You might be like, well, we're not making a game about space, or we're not even making a game about science. You might think that you know everything about the setting or the story that you're trying to tell with your video game. Maybe you're already like as inspired as you can get. Your inspiration battery is just completely full. But I would sort of challenge that to say that what we're going to talk about today doesn't just apply to talking to scientists. It could be talking to historians. It could be talking to storytellers. It could be talking to other people's lived experience to try and make a more inclusive game, a more diverse game, a more accessible game. And everything we're talking about today is, in favor of that. So to help you get in that mindset, we invite everybody to like ask yourself the question right now. What's one conversation that you could have that would make your game better? And so for us, that's about making, getting the science into the game, putting the science in front of the player, letting the player play the science. But for you, that might be something totally different. And yeah, when you're asking yourself what could make your game better, we're going to show you that better is like really broad. It's not just about game mechanics, it's about marketing, all the stuff that we've said already. So yeah, the first step, Tess, is
Yeah, so you want to find these people. So maybe you've got somebody in mind at the moment, or maybe it's a type of person, or maybe it's a whole class of people, perhaps professors, whoever it is. For us, because it's a space game, I was super excited. It was like NASA scientists and rocket scientists and engineers, people working in astrobiology. So I just basically went on the internet, because pretty much everyone's there, and did a search, and a lot of people came up with their emails, believe it or not. So it was quite simple, and you can do a little bit deep diving, and maybe you can read some research papers or articles and then see who the author is. So I'll just tell you, this is the email, the cold email that I sent out. So dear blah, blah, I'm a space nerd writing to you from Auroch Digital, a small game development studio in Bristol, UK, with a passion for getting realistic science into games. We're the team who made Mars Horizon, name drop, and Link, and we're continuing to explore space-related content. You're on our wish list of space humans we'd love to connect with. We want to ensure the authenticity of our research and future content. Without saying much more, I'm hoping to pique your interest, and I wonder whether you'd be interested in learning more about our project, answering a few of our astrobiology-related questions, referring to the search for life and anomalies we find in our universe. It would be a dream to have you on board. Looking forward to hearing from you. That's right, already the expectation that they're going to get back to me. Best, Tess.
yeah. There's a lot of similarities with this with online dating.
I know. We'll get into that. So yeah, sometimes it's also as simple as just filling out a contact form on a website. I know sometimes you're just like, would they ever read that? Well, apparently they do. So we've got I'll tell you kind of our stats. And yes, I'll say you want to embrace that risk, because yes, online dating at work, it kind of feels like you find some names and some photos on the internet and an email, and it's kind of like this, can I actually just email? Yeah, you totally can. And you just should, because literally what's the worst thing that can happen, but they just don't respond. Imagine all the spam that we get that we just don't respond to. So it's not that big a deal, but you just want it to be a warm greeting, and you just want it to be short and clear as to what you're asking for. So I made that email and I sent it out to 40 people, 40 individuals and 10 companies. Of those 40 individuals, I received 15 replies. That led to 13 conversations, and a total, in the end, we've got maybe, there was like 7 follow-up conversations and 1 official partnership where there's actually money exchanging hands. Now with the 10 companies, hit rate was probably not quite as good, but of 10 companies, I got 4 replies, 3 conversations, and that led to 2 partnerships. So basically, you really want to just cast a wide net. And also, I had 2 decks. One was not an NDA deck. Now we're quite lucky because, we already had a game and we're making a sequel. So there was a lot of non-NDA information that we could share to give context. Now what's really great about that kind of cold email along with context is that when you do eventually have that conversation, if you only have 30 minutes, you don't have to spend 10 of it explaining yourself. Actually, you can dive right in, start asking your questions, and get that conversation going. And it's just really beneficial. They understand what it is. Then I had an NDA deck for those partnerships that were worth pursuing. And then when we had the follow-up conversations, we were able to kind of go a bit deeper and be able to ask questions about mechanics and be able to tell them we're making a sequel, which was quite exciting. Um, and yes, also, you kind of want to assume that you're never going to speak to them again. So again, like online dating, you want to make your best impression just in case you never see them again. And that is so you can get the most out of the interview. But also from that, you want to see if they have any recommendations of any other scientists. And what's really great is once you're like, oh, so I spoke to so and so, they recommended you. And you're like, oh, really? And they're like, oh yeah, so and so is a gamer. They might be interested in this. And pretty soon, it's like join the party, and it feels like Pokemon. You're like, I'm gonna catch all the scientists. Ooh, I want that astrobiologist. Oh, I read that paper. And I was like, oh, John, look what I got for you today. So I was the Pokemon hunter. That was my job. And then lots of people are gamers. So a game key is like a really great thing to give to them, especially, I mean, in our case, we are making a sequel. So not only did it give them context, it actually got them excited about the collaboration, and got them more interested. But also just as like a thank you, not for government employees, which we learned actually ends up feeling like a bribe, which was not the intention. But yeah, offering a game key is a way, especially if you just have a one-off conversation, kind of leave them feeling like like that they were kind of we were grateful to speak to them. So next is make sure you can find a win-win relationship with them. So getting the ideas of what the perks are or that they might want before you talk to them is great, because you want to be transparent from the very beginning as how it can be mutually beneficial. So a lot of, in this kind of science realm, of course, we're speaking a lot about our perspective, but you can imagine there's a win-win for a lot of different industries. But for us, there's a lot of researchers and scientists that they have like reach and impact targets. They actually have to get their research to the people. We're offering them quite often a different demographic so they can reach a new audience, and we can be the vessel, as it were, for some of their research to get to those people. And some people, hey, they want money. Some people want their name in the credits. Some people want to be shouted out on Twitter. Either way, to start with that transparency from the very beginning, then there's no resentment and it doesn't feel like anyone's being taken advantage of.
Cool. So yeah, once you've asked these people out, you need to come up with something to ask them. I guess it feels like we're changing the theme of this presentation on the fly. To be
Happening
more like
organically,
online
John.
dating.
Just let it go.
Yeah, so you need to come up with something to ask them to make this collaboration worthwhile for you as a game developer. And the way that we do that is through these short, casual interviews that take like 30 minutes. Sometimes they take an hour, and sometimes, as Tess said, we'll do it over multiple calls. But yeah, we assume that we're only going to get to talk to them once. And I've got some like examples of topics that our design team has explored on the back of these interviews, and also some advice that I've learned through doing these interviews. So the first bit of advice I have is probably really obvious, that you need to research the person that you're going to be interviewing. And I think the reason you're doing this is out of respect for their time. So respect for their time is not just that you show up when you say you're going to show up and you're going to try and fit it in at 30 minutes. If you say it'll take 30 minutes, but that you don't ask them to repeat all this stuff that you can just find on Google anyway. You want to try and make this a worthwhile conversation for everybody involved. And so, you need to watch their YouTube videos if they've done interviews on YouTube, download their podcasts, read a few abstracts, look at their tweets, and you're trying to come up with a list of questions that are inspired by what you've researched and also inspired by your goals for the game. Of course, that sounds like a lot of work, and like anything in the games industry, it is not invulnerable to scope creep. So you need to like keep your eyes on the prize, that you're not writing a biography, you're just doing research for a game. So you should try and always be asking things that are like, oh, that's a game mechanic, that's a bit of content that we could put in. I think some people, at least when we were like spinning up new interviewers or researchers on our team, might be nervous about getting something wrong or like being underprepared. But I would say like you don't have to be Graham Norton, you don't have to be Nardwire or Parkinson. Like you don't need to tell a story with this interview. You can jump around the topics, and it's okay if you get something wrong. In fact, I kind of encourage you to get something wrong, because yeah, you're sort of setting a low bar, and they feel like they can really help you with understand things with their knowledge. So yeah, I definitely like mistook which moons belong to which planets, and got really excited about these tardigrades that crash landed on the moon, and asked an astrobiologist, does this mean that they'll mutate into mutant space bears? Yeah, so it's good to set that bar really low at the start. And once you have your list of questions and you're in the interview, you should be prepared to throw that list of questions away, because the tangents that come up in these conversations, that's the gold dust. When you start like riffing off each other, and you're getting to understand what is the expert excited about, what are they, like Planet Nine and interstellar objects. These are two crazy things in our solar system that I didn't know about before working on this game. But talking to the leading researchers, and like we really are talking to the people who are associated with these things, is just so exciting, and you can see that they're getting thrilled about it, and that's the sort of thing that we want to bottle and yeah, bring to the player. And then hopefully, if you've done the interviews well, you're going to have a lot of ideas on the table, and then it's your job to sort of sift through those and see what is worth keeping, and what's maybe kind of noise or out of scope for the game that you're making. It's just outside of the story that you're trying to tell. And in 2023, most reasonable people play video games. So if you're talking to a scientist about, hey, we're making a video game, we're trying to solve this problem, they might suggest, oh, well, have you considered Dark Souls? Which would not be appropriate at all for our game. But yeah, so everybody has their own examples and their own idea of what Mars Horizon 2 can be. And they've got the best intentions, but they may, be kind of suggesting how to design your team's game for you. And all I'll say is you are the filter. You need to be the person that sifts out those ideas into game mechanics. The example for us was we talked to rocket engineers about risk and reliability, because sometimes rockets explode on the launch pad, and that's really exciting. And how do we communicate that to the player? And the mistake we made was trying to literally put their job like in the game, and it was a little bit too complicated for people. But it was an experience. So like we're learning how to do this as well, how to weave these conversations into game mechanics.
Yeah, totally. I wanted to say on what you were saying, like, I feel like if you get someone's like verbose uncle, it's like a total gift. It's like maybe they've been like trying to tell their niece and nephew all about their research, and the kids are like, but like then you give them this platform, and sometimes they're just like, oh my God, like so relieved and so excited to talk to us. Yeah, so the next part I want to talk about is basically getting marketing involved as early as possible, because they could have ideas of people that would be really good to market with. They could also tell us if it's not really worth it to go into a formal partnership, to have them on a panel, or to be tweeting with them or anything like that, because they don't have much of a following. So they could have ideas for people with large followings. They could also be really helpful with the kind of non-NDA deck and be like, you can say this, you can't say that. It's really great to get them on board. This is a question that is great that marketing got to provide the answer for us. It's one thing to feel all high and mighty that you're making relevant content rooted in science. Oh yeah, so passionate. But if no one cares, like, is it worth it? So we had our marketing team after Mars Horizon send out a survey, and they asked whether it was important to the players that we worked with space agencies for the realism and authenticity it brought. And it's clear, it's a resounding yes. So it is totally worth it. And it gives the player this confidence that what they're playing is a simulation of a space agency, because we've done that consultation. So having them early as pre-production basically means that the win-win isn't an empty promise. So when I talk about this win-win relationship, you need to back that up. And John and I can't back that up. We're not the ones who can actually get their research to the people who can make the game, but the marketing team really need to kind of weave it all into their beats. And so getting them in early, I can't say enough, get them in early. They've also can provide valuable insights on the demographic and the targets and whether that like actually having a panel with this scientist is worth it. So on the left here, we have Constantine. Super cool. He's in a band. He's a NASA scientist, and he's got quite a big following. He's also helping us with our orbital mechanics. He's very cool. He's been on the Lex Friedman podcast. He's like really, really relevant right now. So that's really great. And we have a formal exchange with money. That's a formal partnership that we have out of this. And then on the right here, this is one of the panels that we've done. We've got UK Space Agency. We've got Dr. Sian Proctor, went on to be an astronaut. There's our great leader, CEO Thomas Rawlings, and that was for Steam's Tabletop Fest. And so they did a panel there, so it's not even necessarily talking about the game, but being able to kind of riff on the content of the game. And any interviews that you do with the consultants, you can film, obviously with consent of those consultants, but that can be like filed away for later for marketing purposes. They can make TikToks, they can use it in announcements, or they can edit it into something, tangible for one of their many marketing beats, because all marketing teams have loads of beats they need to hit. So just having all this content, just waiting for them, they will be so happy for you, with you, at you.
Yeah. So this, so like we were talking about a lot of the advantages of this collaboration and this way of doing research. And also it can be like a lot of fun to talk to these people. You get a little bit starstruck when you're talking to somebody with Dr. Professor, NASA at the end of their name. Yeah, so the kind of last thing I want to say here is that you should share it with your team. You shouldn't just like keep all of the research to yourself. So as Tess said, you can record it for the marketing beats, but you can also like save up all of these recordings to share with your development team. And that's great for a couple of reasons. The first one is that you're sharing the inspiration, and different disciplines will get inspired by this content in different ways. So myself and probably some of the other designers were mostly focused on systems design and turning anecdotes into game mechanics. But if we showed it to the artists, for example, they might have a new way of looking at a model, or they might get inspired in a totally different way. So that's really nice from that perspective. It also gets them excited to work on the game, and once you've started this process and sharing it with your team, you can crowdsource the questions for your next interviews with the different people on your team. You can say, next week we're going to be interviewing X. If anybody has questions, fire me off a message on Teams. And sometimes those questions are way better than the questions that we've come up with from research that might be quite in the weeds. It might just be as simple as, do you believe there's aliens? So those can be really good. And then when you're sharing this and crowdsourcing the questions, you can also build out the people who can do interviews on your team, because when you're as prolific as Tess is in asking people to do these interviews, it can be a lot of work for few people to actually do those interviews. So it's good to like ramp up other people to do those interviews also. And we're going to be continuing to talk to them throughout production on Mars Horizon 2. Yeah, so our last bit.
Yes, okay. Well, you've all been waiting for it. So we've got a case study. We put all this into practice, and we didn't really know where it would take us, but here we go. Who knows where it would lead? So basically, have an open mind. You're talking to these people, and a win-win for somebody, you don't know what that means for them. So for us, it meant going to see a rocket launch in Iceland. And in August of last year, my cold emails, calling them cold emails, warm, cold emails, they got an enthusiastic reply from a small rocket company in the UK, and they'd heard of the game. bonus. And they were really keen on supporting our design team with all our rocket engineering questions. And so we thought totally worth it, signed the NDA with them. And they came back and said, well, you have to sign our NDA too. And we're like, oh, okay. And they're like, yeah, well, we're going to be telling you revealing some rocket secrets. So and then so we told them, we got to tell them about we were making a sequel. And then once both NDAs were signed, I like cheekily sent them an email being like, you want to tell us all our secrets now? And he's like, I'm going to call you right now. I was like, oh, okay, sure. I was like, oh my gosh, like the team's call came in like instantly, which can kind of feel like a supervillain and like a screen call happening. And he was like, do you want to come to a rocket launch? We're having a rocket launch in Iceland, and we'd like to have you both come and be in the VIP cabin. I was like, oh, no, think about it. I have to ask my boss. I hope he chooses me. So that was really exciting. Next slide. And so this is the timeline, okay? This kind of my email, my warm, cold email came out on August 4th. Then we had the NDA signed by here, and that was when they said this rocket launch was going to happen. Now, we're making a game that has rocket launches in it. We know there's a window, okay? It's not like, oh, the launch is going to be this day. It was like, here's the window. Have your bags packed. You'll have 48 hours, and then you've got to come to Iceland for this rocket launch. Oh my gosh, we were so excited. Yeah, spoiler, we were chosen, obviously. So exciting. So we flew to Reykjavik on the 4th. We drove across the entire country, and we got as close as we could. On the way, we tried to contact some astrobiologists at the local universities. We were just so excited. We're like, oh man, we could talk to more people. This would be amazing. They were like, what? Now? No, sorry. So we were like, got really excited. And then we spent the night as close as we could get in one day. Then the next day, we got at 4 a.m. and had to drive another 3 hours to basically the edge of the world.
Yeah, so like a little bit about what this mission was that we were going to see is that like it was mostly an engineering test. It was mostly about testing a launch vehicle because they're a private rocket company and they want to, offer this as a service. This is the next bus going up into low Earth orbit. Do you want to hop on? So this was a test for that service. So the payload, if people are not aware, that's the bit that's at the top of the rocket, and that normally has like the important mission stuff on it. That would be where a satellite would go, or an astronaut, or a rover, or something like that. Well, the payload this time was they had all of the engineering, telemetry stuff, but then they were just sending some stuff that was like, I guess, will increase in value if it goes up to space. So they sent a can of soda, a Scottish soda that we can't say the name of. They sent some merchandise from a Scandinavian game company that we can't say the name of. They also sent some hops to make space beer, and then we still don't know what this means, but they sent an NFT up on it. It was on a stick or a USB stick or something. But yeah, who knows? But yeah, so this was really a stepping stone in the process. Maybe it was like a little bit lower stakes than the missions that we're used to seeing like on the movies or on YouTube all the time. But it was super interesting for us because they were really open about the whole process. And so getting to be part of this was really like, getting to step into a turn of Mars Horizon 2. We got to feel all of the challenges that they had to go through. So the rocket science is as we all know, complicated, but it gets even more complicated when you need to ship your launch pad from the UK to Iceland and then build it at the edge of the world. So it definitely makes it a little bit more complex. Then the rocket they were using was from a previous launch that didn't go ahead, and they stored it in essentially a barn at one of the locals. So they had to clean it, repair it, inspect it, make sure that it was all going to be okay and worth launching. And then they also had to build mission control, which is the thing that you see in all the movies of like, screens of trajectories and data, surrounded by nerds. I don't know what they're all doing, but they had
Kind of looks like this, just with everyone on the screen in front of them.
yeah. But they had to build their mission control there as well. They didn't have like a building like you'd see in the Martian or Apollo or whatever. Yeah, and to connect their mission control to the launch pad, rural Iceland especially, is not known for its internet connectivity. Your phones don't work there or anything like that. So they laid a 6 kilometer cable by hand. That was like the lifeline between mission control and the launch pad. And if you stepped on this cable, if you like cut it, that was it. Like just everybody would go home, and millions of pounds would be wasted. So like if you decided in this VIP porta cabin that you needed to pop out to the loo, you'd be like, the security guards are watching you to make sure you don't put your feet in the wrong place. Yeah, so pretty exciting. It sounded like, a lot of challenges, but that's just gameplay to us.
It happened. I had to pee, and I was really worried about peeing on the cable. It was not easy to see. They're like, "Oh yeah, they don't forget the cable," and I was like, where is it? I don't. Oh god, it was they like had cones to a certain point, and then yeah, it was very stressful. So like I said, okay, you're with us now. We left our hotel at 4 a.m. to drive to meet the rocket people at 7 a.m. at the edge of the world. We had to meet them because we had to like off-road on this crazy volcanic landscape, and our little rental car wasn't going to do the job. So we met biz dev and marketing, and they took us with them. Again, they showed us the cable. Do not step on the cable. We were escorted to a really glamorous VIP cabin, which is basically a storage unit. And it was meant to have heating, tea and coffee, and a live feed. However, they only had one power cable. So it was mission control or the VIP cabin. So we didn't have any of those things. We were just in a storage container with the mayor and his wife, making really awkward conversation. Apparently Iceland's like open for business for things like that. He was like really proud. It's like they had other rocket launches there. I guess it's the edge of the world, so it's a good place. So yes, and then outside the cabin, there were like 6 cars lined up, watching in the direction of the where the rocket launch was going to be. That was literally the whole village, all 6 cars. There was about 12 people who lived in this tiny village. And the launch was supposed to happen at 9 a.m. While it was relatively clear, but we could barely see the rocket. It was pretty, weather was pretty bad. And yeah, they were doing like some weather testing and stuff.
Yeah, so they would update us like every 20 minutes if the rocket was about to launch or not. So we would just get like a notification saying 20 minutes to launch, and they were launching weather balloons up. But like, we could see from where we were, the weather was desperate. Like it was really cold, extremely windy. You couldn't see anything with the fog. And it just seemed like, yeah, really crazy that they would try to launch it.
20 minutes to launch! They kept saying that, 20 minutes to launch! And then we were like, I think that if we were in our own game, we would probably not waste all our resources or science on this launch because it's pretty windy. It's a pretty bad weather. And then we were like, we might have to rethink reliability and weather in Mars Horizon 2 if this succeeds.
I know they're 20 minutes to launch. They have this exclusion zone that's out into the ocean where the rocket is going to go up. And there was a fisherman had gone into the exclusion zone. Apparently, if a rocket like takes off like over your head, it's the same as getting doused in napalm. So that would be a very unsuccessful launch if that was the result. There's not many people at the edge of the world in Iceland.
No, 20 minutes to launch, and the CEO was like standing right in front of us, like muttering up and down, being like, we have to launch, or we have to go home, and we don't have any, take the rocket home, we've had it stored in a year, blah, 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 blah. It was quite intense.
Yeah, so like after all of these 20-minute to launch intervals, they decided, very bravely, I think, that it's like, will we launch it and learn something, or will we just pack it all up and go home? But they decided to press the big red button, and It's kind of like a magic trick. Like it's here for a second. Poof.
Failed. Oh, go back, please.
Oh.
Failed due to an anomaly. Anomaly that blew the rocket into the sea. The team were absolutely gutted and they were so disappointed, and we could really feel that. They bought us a post-launch lunch. We sat there and they were just like so dejected, and we really felt that. And we were also like, this is great for the game. We realized the worst case scenario was that they launched at 9 a.m. and at 9:15 we'd left and like gone to the sauna or something and didn't really bond with anyone, didn't talk to anyone, didn't actually understand like the weight of how much money and resources and science went into that, the amount of people that went into that. Everyone was on deck, the people that laid the cable, like, you know, that took hours, they were up through the night. So really then going like, okay, how do we capture that? In
Absolutely,
our game?
because you can like watch rocket launches almost every day of the week now on YouTube, and if it doesn't go well, they just give you the blanket statement there was an anomaly, and they don't tell you like anything that happens beyond that. But they especially don't tell you that like this is a very human enterprise. People like have stakes on the line, they have their careers on the line, they are willing this rocket up into space, and yeah, I guess we see the cheering and high five when it works, but we actually got to experience like people being dejected and determined to do it again this time. So really like inspiring, but also like privileged that we got to see that. And I suppose to wrap up, we got to do this because of the cold calling. Like we didn't this opportunity didn't come and seek our team out. It was just us randomly getting in touch with people, and who knows what might happen if you try and collaborate outside of your game dev team.
Yeah, totally. And like I said, embrace the risk, just go and really think big, think wildly, like who could I actually talk to that would be the most amazing person? They could be famous. It doesn't matter. Like no one's untouchable. We're all human beings. And you actually have no idea what it could lead to, or what trouble you'll get into, or the bonding experience you could have with your fellow developer.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned that same blizzard that probably destroyed the launch. We actually got stuck in on a mountain, halfway up a mountain on the way home. But that's a story for
We almost
another
died,
day.
and we actually didn't come back when we should have, and it was quite intense. It's quite intense.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to see what a collaborative game can turn out like, or like the sort of stuff that we do, then you can look to Mars Horizon 2. That'll be coming out next year-ish. And yeah, you can wishlist it today. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And if you have any questions,
Oh yeah.
go for it. Hello? Oh. Thanks, Joe. Microphone wielder.
First of all, really, really great talk. Thank you so much. So talking about the interviews, like the kind of conversations you'd have initially, I really liked your analogy of like having a verbose uncle, kind of like wanting to tell you everything. But have you ever had a kind of conversation where it's kind of been, a little stalled or a little bit kind of awkward? Because I definitely have. And like, what would be your advice to get as much out of that as possible?
Well, I think what you'd said, John, about learning as much about them beforehand as you can actually gives you, people tend to like to talk about themselves, and it's what they know. So actually being able to, and I know, John, you said like, okay, well, you don't want them to repeat themselves, but sometimes in this case, what I would suggest is when you know that they've already talked about something on YouTube, like if it's getting a bit stilted, then you can kind of steer them towards something you already know they're comfortable with, because it's what they're known for, it's what you saw them talking about, and that can also then maybe lead you to other questions that you have. But yeah, kind of aiming towards maybe hopefully what they're already comfortable talking about, if it gets a bit awkward and stilted.
Yeah, for sure. I would say as well, though, that most of the people that we spoke to had done another interview before, and that's like generally a green flag that this is a good person to have even a 30-minute discussion with. But yeah, we did have some conversations that just it wasn't their thing, it wasn't going to happen, and I think you just be happy to walk away. It's not always going to work out. But yeah, good question.
Like online dating again.
Yeah.
Just ghost them.
Thanks. Yeah, any more questions?
Well, an amazing talk. I really, because you talk about interviewing experts, right? And we had there Dr. Thomas Rawlings interviewing Dr. Jacob Frixelius, which is the creator of Terraforming Mars. So probably one of the best examples of an expert creating a game on something that they are very knowledgeable on. So the question is about going back into games, actually, because this is a closed session, right?
No,
Open?
it's open.
Oh, okay.
Watch your mouth. Yeah, but it's being streamed live for the
Yeah.
people at home. So,
Yeah, well,
I'll
I
obfuscate
adapted
your
the question. We here at Sumo and Orok, we work with external developers, right? Or porting games or creating games on existing IPs. And sometimes it's difficult to get actual answers from our partners because maybe they are on another projects or whatever. So what would be your recommendation for actually getting good answers? Because that will inform a lot how we approach this game in their IP and how can we make basically a better game on their IP, because it's also a win-win situation, but sometimes it feels like there's difficult to get that info.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say about our approach is there was like little to no red tape in our way. Like there was no bureaucracy that we had to overcome. Like that, it's really a credit to Tess. She just has extreme neck and confidence to write an email to anyone. So we had like a direct line from our dev team to this person, and we do have some collaborations with other organizations that are a little bit slower. I don't know if that's really answering your question, but that it's like it's a little bit indirect. You have to email this person to send it to this person to find out the answer. But in most of our conversations, it's been like one-to-one. We're just sending emails to them directly.
Also, by casting such a wide net, kind of narrowed it down, because like I said, there was 15 people and 13 follow-up conversations. 2 of them, it was like they started to talk about the red tape, and I was like, no. I was just like, just no. Like, oh well, we kind of I have to talk to this person. I belong to this university. I'm not allowed to speak on here. And I think as far as like things being slow, it can be really slow, and gentle nudges where it's like sometimes it feels like, oh gosh, I really shouldn't reply. I shouldn't follow up. But every time I do, I put it in my calendar. I'd be like, okay, they might not reply. I put 2 weeks, nudge this person every 2 weeks. And so it comes up, and I've never had someone be like annoyed that I replied. It's usually like, oh yeah, sorry, I get so many emails. Also, if you get a automatic reply, put it in your calendar when they're back. And I usually time it about an hour before they start work, depending on the time zone, so that you're at the top of their email inbox.
Do you see what I mean? Like she's a monster.
But you have to do that. You want to be at the top of their email inbox because you are spam. Like ultimately, that's what you are. And in the subject heading, I didn't say this, but the subject heading was a consultation on a video game about space? ? So it's like, that's a subject. Who wouldn't want to open that email?
Oh yeah, you're such a wonderful producer, Tess. A second question is, what was your process for contacting them? Did you consulted with leadership first, like with, I don't know, Tom or Peter, or you basically just sent the email first and consulted with leadership then?
Yeah, so I drafted that email and sent it to Tom and John, and they had a few tweaks. And then I made those tweaks, sent it again. So just kind of got sign off and then really did ask like, so can I send it to like everyone? And Tom's response was, of course. Like, there's no, he's like, and when you get a reply, like, it was like, ooh, we got this person. And then we looked deeper, and then I contacted, and everyone that I got a reply, I then checked in to be like, is this person worth pursuing? Also, along with marketing. So I kind of became this kind of first point of contact, but ultimately, it's not up to me if they're valuable. The value comes from biz dev, marketing, and design. Possibly art, you know, depending on the who it is. So I don't really make that judgment call. So it is important to have all those people in the conversation.
I think we do need to acknowledge that like OROC is pretty special in like backing us to do this. Like at a lot of the steps on the way here, they could say like, this is not worthwhile. You know, stop spending any time following up with people. The trip to Iceland was definitely cost somebody some money. I don't know who, but they you know, OROC backed us to do that as well. They could have said no to that also.
Thank you so much for coming to our talk.
Oh,
We're out. We're done.
okay.
Thank you, everyone.